Ever get this feeling like we're just scratching the surface, like there's this whole other level to life we're missing?
Kind of makes you want to ask the big questions, huh?
Exactly. And you know who else was asking those big questions? Way back when.
Let me guess. The ancient Greeks.
Bingo! Turns out those guys were wrestling with some seriously deep stuff. Stuff that still matters today. And that's what this deep dive is all about. We're jumping into ancient Greek philosophy with Triết Hy Lạp as our guide.
It's by PGSTS, Le Kongzu, a fantastic resource.
So imagine ancient Greece for a second. What comes to mind?
To me, it's this amazing blend of myths and legends, gods and monsters. You know, like the Titans battling Zeus.
Epic. But they also had those incredible early forms of religion developing, right?
Exactly. It was electric, this fusion of mythology, religion, and the first sparks of philosophical thought, all happening at the same time. Actually, page 57 dives into that really well.
Okay, so we've got epic poems, temples, the works. But how do you go from, hey, Zeus, make it rain, to, like, deep philosophical debates about existence?
Well, around the 8th century BC, during what's called the Homeric period, something started to shift. Remember the Iliad and the Odyssey?
Are you kidding? The epics that basically invented drama? How could I forget?
Right. But they weren't just entertainment. Those stories were grappling with some heavy stuff. Love, loss, fate, the meaning of life.
So they were exploring philosophy through storytelling before they even had the word for it.
Exactly. Instead of asking, what is justice, they'd tell a story about Odysseus getting tricked by the gods, and bam, you're hooked.
And thinking, it's genius, really.
It's like their entire culture was primed for questioning, which paved the way for thinkers like Socrates. He famously said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Page 45 really gets into his whole deal.
So true.
This was a society where intellectual curiosity was thriving. You can practically hear Socrates debating in the streets of Athens, challenging everyone to think critically about their beliefs.
And that's where our deep dive gets really exciting. Get ready to meet some philosophical rock stars. Plato, Aristotle, the gang's all here. All right, I'm ready for some philosophical rock stars. Bring on the big guns.
Okay, but get ready, because these big guns come with some seriously big ideas. Let's start with Plato. You know, the theory of forms guy.
Oh yeah, Plato, the theory of forms. That one always felt a little, I don't know, abstract. What even as a form in this context?
Okay, picture this. The perfect cup of coffee.
Like, objectively perfect.
Exactly. Not a specific cup you've had, but the pure essence of coffeeness. The aroma, the warmth, that perfect bittersweet taste. That, my friend, is a form, according to Plato.
So it's like the ultimate blueprint for all coffee, the Platonic ideal of coffee.
Precisely. Plato believed that for everything we see in this world, there's a perfect, unchanging form of it, existing in a realm beyond our senses. He describes it on pages 191 and 196.
So like a super real reality that we just can't quite grasp.
You got it. The physical world is just a shadow play compared to the true reality of the forms.
Whoa, that's heavy.
To explain this whole concept, Plato used this really famous allegory, the allegory of the cave, which is on pages 196 and 197.
Okay, the allegory of the cave. I think I've heard of this one.
Imagine prisoners trapped in a cave, their whole lives, seeing only shadows projected on the wall. They think those shadows are all that's real, never knowing the amazing world outside.
That's kind of depressing. But I get it. We can get so caught up in the surface level of things. It's like we're all stuck in Plato's cave sometimes.
Exactly. Scrolling through social media, watching the news, we think that's the whole picture. But Plato challenges us to break free from those chains, you know, to question what we see and strive for true knowledge.
Okay, I am definitely ready to break free of some chains after that one. But Plato wasn't the only philosophical heavyweight around, was he?
Oh, absolutely not. Now, if Plato was the head-in-the-clouds philosopher, his student Aristotle was the roll-up-your-sleeves pragmatist.
Oh yeah, Aristotle. Didn't he basically invent logic?
He was all about observation, logic, breaking things down to understand them. Seriously, the guy practically gave us the scientific method we still use today.
Wait, seriously?
Yep. And yeah, he was big on logic. He actually invented the syllogism, which is a way to reach logical conclusions from known facts. He lays it all out on page 245.
That sounds like a super useful thing.
Here's a classic example. All humans breathe air. You're human, therefore you breathe air. Sounds simple, but it's powerful stuff for building arguments and really thinking things through.
It's like a philosophical puzzle.
And speaking of puzzles, Aristotle wasn't afraid to tackle the big ones, like the fundamental nature of reality itself.
Metaphysics.
Exactly. And get this, on page 132, he describes this force he calls no, this cosmic intelligence, setting the universe in motion and guiding how it all unfolds.
So even Aristotle, the king of logic, saw a place for something bigger than ourselves, something beyond just the physical world.
He did. It really makes you think. What would Aristotle have made of dark matter, dark energy, all those mysteries we're still trying to figure out?
Right. It's incredible how these ancient questions still fuel our curiosity today. Okay, we've covered two absolute giants of philosophy, but ancient Greece wasn't exactly short on thinkers. What about the pre-Socratics? You know, the ones who came before Socrates?
The pre-Socratics, they were like the trailblazers, really grappling with the nature of the cosmos before anyone even really knew where to start.
So what kind of groundbreaking ideas were they coming up with?
Well, they didn't have these elaborate theories, but their ideas were seriously radical for their time. Take Heraclitus, for instance. He's discussed on page 124.
Heraclitus. Go on.
He believed in something called logos, this principle of order and change governing the universe. It's like saying everything's in constant flux, always changing, but there's an underlying order to it all.
Okay, that's pretty deep. Always changing, but with an underlying order.
Right. And then there's Zeno, whose paradoxes still blow our minds today. He's discussed on page 111. You familiar with the one about Achilles and the tortoise?
The race where Achilles can never actually catch the tortoise. Yeah, that one always felt like my brain was melting.
Right. He was exploring the nature of infinity and motion, questioning if movement is even real. It's like saying you keep dividing a distance in half and you'll never actually reach the end.
Wait, so are you saying motion is an illusion?
Yeah.
This is way too much for me to handle right now. Okay, we might need a quick break after this one, but before we do, we have to at least mention the Hellenistic schools.
Oh, absolutely. This was a whole new wave of philosophical thought after Alexander the Great. It was a time of massive upheaval and change, so people were searching for ways to find peace and happiness in a world that felt like it was falling apart. And these Hellenistic schools, they offered different paths.
Like ancient Greek philosophy for every mood. I like it.
Exactly. You had the Stoics, preaching acceptance and finding happiness through virtue, no matter what life throws your way.
Sounds pretty intense.
Then you had the Epicureans, all about seeking pleasure and avoiding pain.
No, those are my kind of people.
No. And of course, you can't forget the skeptics, who basically questioned everything.
So if you were in a cynical mood, the skeptics were your go-to. Wow, ancient Greece really did have a philosophy for every occasion. But, you know, even with all those different schools of thought, they were really all wrestling with the same questions we're still asking today. What's the good life? How do we find happiness? What's the point of all this anyway?
It's timeless, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes to show, this deep dive isn't just ancient history. We're uncovering the roots of Western thought, the seeds of ideas that still shape our world.
Wow, we have really gone deep today, haven't we? Philosophical rock stars, mind-bending paradoxes. I mean, ancient Greece was the place to be if you wanted to talk about the big questions.
It's amazing how relevant it all still feels today, isn't it? We often think of ancient Greece as this, like, distant past, but their ideas, they're everywhere.
It's true. So how did these ancient ideas manage to survive, you know, for centuries? How did they end up shaping the world we live in today?
It's a fascinating story of rediscovery and reinterpretation. Let's take Aristotle, for instance.
Okay, Aristotle, what happened there?
Well, after the fall of Rome, his work was practically lost to the West. But get this, scholars in the Islamic Golden Age, they preserved his writings, translated them, kept his ideas alive.
You're kidding. So ancient Greek thought got a second life thanks to the Islamic world.
Exactly. And then centuries later, boom, Jews like Thomas Aquinas reintroduce Aristotle to Europe, integrate his philosophy into Christian theology. Talk about influential.
That's incredible. You can read more about that in the book, by the way, page 358.
It really goes to show you knowledge has a way of transcending boundaries. And it wasn't just Aristotle. The impact of ancient Greek thought, it's woven into our political systems, our legal frameworks, even our art and literature.
It's really mind-blowing when you think about it like that. Okay, so we're still grappling with these ancient ideas today, but does that mean we're any closer to actually finding the answers? Take Plato's idea of philosopher kings. Should we be, like, searching for leaders who are philosophical masterminds?
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? Ancient Greek philosophy doesn't hand us a neat set of answers. Instead, it gives us these incredible tools for asking better questions,
Yeah.
Challenging our assumptions and really embracing the complexity of life.
It's so true.
What began with stories of gods and monsters evolved into this incredible, enduring quest for knowledge, for self-understanding.
Not bad for a bunch of thinkers from thousands of years ago, right? It really makes you appreciate the power of ideas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe by diving into these ancient texts ourselves, we can spark new insights, new ways of thinking, even shape the future in some small way.
Well said. That's a pretty inspiring note to end on. If you've been bitten by the ancient Greek philosophy bug, trust me, this is just the beginning. There's a whole universe of wisdom waiting to be discovered, so keep those philosophical conversations going.